Thanks for tuning in to OPM Live. We're so happy to see you on today. And OPM Live is an extension of Ordinary People magazine. We're so glad to see you, and we do hope that your week was a great week and everything is okay with you. We're so excited to talk to authors this month. So, for the month of June, we will be communicating or talking to independent authors, learning a little bit more about them as an author, how they got started, uh, how they came up with the name of their book, and just how's it going as an independent author. But before we get to that, we have a great guest today, Pastor Paulette Harper. But before we get to her, I just want to share a little bit about really how I've been feeling lately with the climate as it is. Uh, I did I did watch the video of Mr. George Floyd, and I really at first didn't know exactly what I was looking at. Someone had, how things come on your feed on Facebook, and I watched it pretty much to the end, and I can say it actually took my breath away because I'm trying to wondering, do this man hear him? And I see the expression of his face, and it really just shook me. And then with the protests and everything that's been happening, it took me back to when I was a young girl. I might have been second grade. And at that time, I lived in Memphis, Tennessee. And it was during the time of Dr. Martin Luther King. He was there that particular weekend. And, he had a speech and everything was going on. And I can remember the day that he was assassinated and how everything took place. We lived downtown in Memphis at that time, and we wasn't too far from the Lorraine Motel. And I'm really trying not to tear up because everything that has taken place in the past few days really took me back to that time. Like I said, I was a little girl. I might have been second grade, I believe. But I can remember that weekend. It rained, it rained, it rained. It was as if the sky just opened up and everything started to take place. And I can remember, if I'm not mistaken, they had to call in the National Guard, and we didn't have school, and everyone, grown ups, had black bands on their arms. And as I began to really reflect on that, and how I even felt as a child, not really knowing what was going on, but I did understand, and then seeing all of it on television. And that's what this took me back to. And I began to feel really, really sad and totally numb because although this is taking place now, in my mind, I was back there. I was back when I was a little girl and everything was taking place and we couldn't go to school in the rain. And I can remember one little boy that we had to get out of school early that particular day, I believe, and it was raining. And one little boy had dropped his library book, and it was a huge gutter there. You know how you have the sidewalk and then you have the gutter that's under, like, underneath the sidewalk. But anyway, he had dropped his book and he went to get the book, and the currency was so rough that it took him under down into the gutter. And although everything is taking place now, it took me back to that time. And I realized, and then I began to have those same feelings as I was, those same feelings when I was a little girl, those afraid, being fearful, being totally just fearful of what's happening and what's going to take place if I go to somewhere, if I go to a store, if and I just realized I really just did not want to I did not want to feel like that. And I really had to pray. I stayed inside so that I could pray. And normally, when I'm feeling totally afraid of something or I'm having some type of feeling, I just really just go to bed. And I found myself just totally numb. But after I began to pray and talk to a few friends, I found myself began to feel a little bit better. But I wanted to say that I do hope that you all are feeling better. You know, I know we all have our feelings about about some things, but it's okay to feel the way that you feel. It's totally okay. No one can dictate how you should feel or how you shouldn't feel. And that's it. That's about all I would really want to say on that. We have an awesome guest today, Pastor Paulette Harper. She's an independent author, and like I said earlier, all month long we will be talking to independent authors, finding out about their books, how they got started, and just everything about an author. And so, with that being said, I'm going to bring in Pastor Harper. Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm feeling great. And how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. I do appreciate it.
Oh no, it is definitely our pleasure. So we tell us first before we get started into the question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, you already introduced me, but by my title, but I have also been an author since 2008, and I'm also a speaker and a marketing or book writing coach. So I teach authors how to write their own books and publish their books. And for ever since probably in the when I got committed my life to the Lord, I have really just had a passion to help women, share their voice and just speak life to women who have gone through emotional trauma because I live that as well. And so I really absolutely love, you know, uh, sharing my gifts and my tools to women and to those who, want to have a life that a life that is transformed. So I help women do that. And then I live in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area in beautiful Cali. I have two children or two adult daughters, and I am Mimi to four grandkids.
Wow, that's great. That's great. All boys or all girls?
Three boys and two boys and two girls.
That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. I'm Mimi to seven, I believe.
Okay.
We have uh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boys.
Wow. Okay.
And one girl.
One girl. Oh my God. I just get spoiled.
One girl, and she's the youngest of all. I think she's about 1 years old. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, she's our one and only.
Okay.
So we're going to begin with our questions, and you are definitely welcome to answer them as you see fit. So I'm going to start with what inspired you to start writing?
Well, the inspiration came when I was going through my divorce, and I began to journal my state of this transition that I was in. Had been married for 23 years, and and so now I found myself faced with being alone and being single at 40.
Mm.
Yeah, and so that was a major transition for me, and I began to write my story. Just really, I'm a firm believer that I don't think God allows us to go through things and it just in that it's in vain. There's a purpose for it all, and I just believe that God gets glory out of our lives, even in the pain that we go through. And so I felt a nudge from Him to write my book, and And I was able to do that. So I shared and chronicled that season in my life that I was going through the divorce and the emotional, physical, and spiritual battles that I faced while, being faced with a new terrain in life. And so that's really where I got started. I started writing nonfiction, and then from there, it just went on to write fiction and then also a children's book as well.
Is this the one called Women Who Soars?
Actually, my first book is called That Was Then, This Is Now, This Broken Vessel Restored. That was my very first book, and that really was the turning point in my life, because I was at a very vulnerable point where I was sharing about this divorce. I was married to a pastor, and so that was a layer that I had to pull back as well. There was many layers to writing that story, because there was still some wounds that I had to I couldn't keep covering, and I had to expose. And so that was Then, This Is Now. This Broken Vessel Restored was really the opening point for me to be able to share other stories and other writings that God would give me later.
So you started from journaling first, and then took the journaling and then created the book.
No, actually, I didn't. I didn't start journaling. I had nothing. What I did was, I'm a pantser, is what they call. So I can sit at my computer, my laptop, and I can just write.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that particular time, I didn't know anything about writing. I just knew it was a nudge from God to share my story. And so he began to just, download information to me about things that I could share, because there's some things about our stories that everybody don't need to hear
Yeah.
and read. And so when I said yes, that I would write my story, of course, I knew that it was about me. And it was then trying to decide on what is it that I want readers to know about Paulette? What is it that I want readers to know about this journey of going through a divorce? What are the struggles that I face with? What are the challenges that I had to deal with, being 40 and going, getting divorced from a pastor, then, when I say layers, it's the pastoralship, it is the church, it is, the people in the church. There's so many layers that I had to just really pull back. And so, I was just really able to focus in on my own journey. And from there, I created my chapter titles, and based on my chapter titles, it allowed me the creativity to be able to pen and write based on what my chapter title was going to be. The words began to flow based on what I was going to share from that point on.
Wow, that's amazing. So your chapters really came from your chapter titles, or your writing. It just dropped. It just download to you.
Yeah. Yeah. You can do an outline. Basically, that's really what it is. It's an outline. And when you create an outline, you have a sense of focus on what it is that you're going to write in that particular chapter. And for me, I created all of my chapter titles, and then I began to just write based on that. And so, being a minister, I could find scriptures, for support, and elaborate on the scriptures and how I applied those particular scriptures to the situation in which I was going through. And so writing nonfiction was very therapeutic for me. It was an opportunity for me to even see my own personal growth, to see where I was and where the process, how God was taking me through this process. It was really a transformational moment for me, because it really launched me into writing into an area that I had no idea that was really embedded within me, passions and creativity that was in me, but the pain pushed that out of me. And a lot of times that's what happens. happen when we start writing, it comes from the pain that we've gone through. And we are able to share those lessons and experiences and talk about them so that readers that are going through those very same emotions and experiences can find some sense of purpose and can find some sense of hope while they're going through it as well.
Wow, I have one of the someone who's watching has a question, and his question is: once the book was published, how did your ex receive it? And then he asks, what about your family and friends?
Great question. Great question. So, as you can imagine, he was not too happy. The thing about when you're writing a nonfiction book and there are other people involved in your pain and in your story, you don't put their names, but you don't squash your truth. You still speak your truth, but it's a way of doing that, you know. And so, even though I didn't use his name, people knew who I was talking about, and he did too. And so, it's about, you know, you being free. You know, it's about exposing ugliness in people that don't want to face their ugly. And so, no, he was not very happy, not at all, you know. And so, but that was my truth, and that's how I was living it out, you know. And so as far as my family, they supported me because they walked with me through the journey of going through a divorce. It was very ugly for me to go through this divorce. And I didn't want to. I was, you know, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, you know, and so here I am sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ and you know, just really believing other people for healing and restoration and marriages and you know, and I'm, you know, we're going through the very same thing we preach against, you know, and so that in itself was something that I had to just really, you know, break through, you know, my emotions from. And so my family was very supportive of me in that because they walked with me through the divorce, you know, and there was things that was going on in that whole, you know, it was, you know, about 4 years of struggle that, you know, they helped me, you know, navigate going through, you know, being single again. And so they, you know, my first book was dedicated to my mother who had died when I was in my 20s. And I just really believe that she would have been very proud of me to be able to live through something of going through a divorce because there was, you know, I dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts and, you know, low self-esteem. You know, my emotions was just all over the place. And I think she would have been very proud of me that I had gotten to a place where I walked through that, you know, and I was sharing my story, you know, that it was a story of, even though it was painful, it was a story of hope. It was a story of triumph. And who can really question or doubt what your own experiences are because those are your own experiences.
Yes, indeed, indeed, indeed. Awesome. I am so happy that you are smiling that you got through. And what a
Yeah.
great testimony to be able to share with others because we do understand that our testimonies are not for us, that they are for others. And they definitely can help other people or other women that may be going, and men that may be going through a difficult time. And what was the name of that particular book, Now and Then?
That was then. This is now. This broken vessel restored.
Okay. And where can the book? Where is the book? Where can the book be found? I'm sorry.
Yeah, they can actually go on Amazon. They can look me up under Paulette Harper. All of my books are there. They can go to my website as well, pauletteharper.com.
Great, great, great. Love it, love it. And so let me see. I have one more question because you're doing really good.
Thank you.
So how long? So you said you started your first book. You wrote your first book in your 20s.
In 2008, my first book came out.
So you've been writing a very long time.
Yeah, I have.
Wow. That inspiration, how does that come? How do you get this inspiration to write? I mean, I know for me, I have to really go through this whole process. I think for me, I go through a process of everything before I begin to write. Then I have writer's block, and it's just horrible. I can't remember anything. So, do that ever happen? Do you ever have writer's block, and how do you get past it?
Well, I think for me, when I first started writing, I was in this flow, and so the thing about writing is you really have to keep in that mode, because once you stop, it is, for me, it's hard to get back into that mode of, writing and the mode of being, determined and setting goals and whatnot. But when I started writing, the second book came to me, in the process. So my second book is entitled Completely Whole, which is, a great title for someone that has gone through struggles, and so every time I begin to write a story, a book, God would give me the next one. And so I kept in that vein, and that made it easy for me to just keep the momentum going. And so you have to keep the momentum going. One of the things that I was so amazed at when writing my story was I didn't realize that I had so many words that I could articulate, And so when you're writing a story, the words just start coming. And then when you're adding scriptures to it, it just elaborates on the story and the content itself. And so I just continue writing. So my first book and then my second book, Completely Whole. And then when I was writing Completely Whole, I've always been a reader of reading inspirational romance, and so Christian fiction. And so by this time, I've been introduced to authors, because when I first started, I didn't know anyone who had published books. So at this juncture, I'm now introduced to other authors. I'm now introduced to another world of writing where, fiction and historical romance. I mean, just an array of other genres. And it was like, wow, what have I been missing all this time, And so I started to connect with other writers who were writing Christian fiction, and I started reading their books, and I'm like, wow, this is good, because these were some stories they were juicy, they were entertaining, but they had, some depth to them as far as the content and the storyline. So I started to get connected with, these inspirational romance stories, and I'm like, wow, I would love to write a fiction book, and I'm like, wow, I think I'm going to write a fiction book. And so when a thought would come to me, I'd ponder over it, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what if I wrote my own romance story? What if I created these characters that Paulette could identify with? What if I just created my own characters and my own storyline? And so I did that. And so my book, my novel, my fiction novel, Secret Places Revealed, was birthed through that, And so the outlining in there. And so the thing about writing fiction is, oh my God, there's so many layers to writing fiction, because you have character, you have plot, you have the storyline, you have dialogue, you have to be the reader, the writer, you have to create the scene, you have to create the ups and the downs, you have to create the disappointments and the hate and the love and the happy ending, so your mind is like all over the place, but I just, I'm so grateful to God that He gives writers the ability and the creativity to tap into that part of themselves that can just articulate and write and be creative. It's so amazing, And so, yeah, that's where it all began, and it just kept moving me into that momentum, of continuing to write stories. And the one book that you mentioned, Women Who Soar, That's one of the anthologies that I did for. I publish my own books. I don't publish others, but I do publish my own books, and I invite other people to take part in anthologies. And so, Women Who Soar was one of those anthologies that I opened up for other women who wanted to share their stories, and that's one of the anthologies. And then my other one is Arise from the Ashes as well.
Wow, I love that. I have a Christian romance that I've been writing for quite some time. I created my characters. They have some awesome names,
Okay.
and I think I'm on chapter 2, but I've been writing that particular book for quite some time. I have my ending. It's my middle,
Mm-hmm.
so I probably pick it back up. It may not be the time to release it, so I have all of that. So, and then I went to I wrote my first children book.
Okay.
Before that, I wrote another book. But I do understand the writing the nonfiction, the Christian romance, trying to get it just right. So I want to make sure that everything is just right. If I mention street names or whatever,
That's
because
yeah.
it's flip flopping. My main character is narrating, and so she's flip flopping from her college days to now she's grown. So it's
Mm,
going to be an interesting book when it
nice.
comes out. My pastor asked me at that time. My pastor at that time asked me how much of it is true. I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, because I let my girlfriend read the first chapter. In the first chapter, she said, "So is I think it was is Maya me?" I'm like, okay, so I got to be a little bit more creative.
Okay.
I don't want anyone to find themselves in my book. But like you said, I'm telling my story, but I'm giving my characters great names. They have some awesome names. And the setting, of course, is where I live and where I have lived before.
Yeah.
Many different places. So, I don't want anybody to get upset and be totally angry, but it's a story that's will be shared. And I just see that someone said they just purchased one of your books.
Oh, which one? I like to know which one.
I have. He said just purchase the book. I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay. Well,
The
thank
one
you.
talking about now and then. That one.
Well, my first one is That Was Then, This Is Now.
Yeah.
And then I talked about my novel, Secret Places Revealed. And then I mentioned Completely Whole, and then the 2 anthologies.
I think it's the first one because that person asked the question
Okay.
about the ex. Yeah, so I think it was wow.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we got wow, you asked so many of the questions that I have already have marked. You pretty much answered all of them. So which one is your favorite book out of all that you've written? Which is your favorite?
You know what? I think it's my fiction. It's my novel that I did because it took me out of my comfort zone. It took me to a place in my writing that I had not even known was there, and so my novel just really stretched my ability to be creative, to be a writer. And it allowed me to just hone in on gifts and abilities that I absolutely didn't even, realize that I had. And then with my novel, it in 2017, it became the award-winning novel.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an award-winning novel for spiritual romance, and so that in itself was just a blessing to be able to have a book. It's not the only award-winning book that I have, but it's my first novel that's an award-winning book.
And what's the name of that one? Is that
It's called Secret Places.
Oh yeah, Secret Places.
Secret Places Revealed, which is my novel.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I like the title.
Yeah, Secret Places Revealed. And so
I like the title.
Thank you. Thank you. And so it's a clean, inspirational romance. And but we're dealing with with two characters who are definitely flawed, that are not looking for love, but they find it in themselves once they start dealing with their own personal issues. And so, yeah, so that would probably be my best, because it really launched me into a place of writing where I could really learn how to be more creative. You know, it's easy for me to write nonfiction, but writing fiction is totally something that is just, it takes you out of just being comfortable, because there's so many pieces to it that you really have to, you know, be creative and do. And then, you know, other people come to help, you know, make the book look good, as far as editors and, developmental editors, and all those things play a part in making your book really shine.
Do you become your character if your character is do you become any of your female characters? Do you actually just like dive into it and get that from the inside? What I'm trying to say, the depths. You know, do you actually become any of your characters?
Yeah, you know, it's really easy to do that, because your characters begin to just really talk to you in your head. You know, I remember when I used to hear fiction writers say, "Oh, these characters are just talking to me, and they just running this story, and they just doing like this." And at that moment, I had not had that experience, and I'm like, "Well, I have not had that experience. They haven't been talking to me, you know." And the more that I began to write, it happened to me, you know, that they begin to dictate the story. They
Yeah.
begin to just really, create their own dialogue with one another, and the scenes in my mind. That's the creative side of the brain, you know.
Hmm.
And so, yes, the characters begin to do that. And so in my book, Secret Places Revealed, um, the the characters in there just begin to just really take on their own story and how they wanted the story to flow, you know. And so, yeah, it was absolutely amazing to even be able to write the characters in themselves, and then to allow them to just really move the story in the direction in which it was supposed to go.
That's amazing. I can I want to say that I didn't my particular character, my main character in my Christian romance, I I kind of stifle her a little bit. But then when I had to do some research, because one part of the story she has to go back to her college days, or in her mind she's going back and forth, and so she is a third generation Spelman graduate. So going back and forth with that, I needed to list her dorm, but I had to
Mm.
go I had to go to Spelman College to get a feel for the campus, to
Oh, yeah.
excuse me, to get a feel for everything. And as I'm sharing my story with one of the professors or teachers that was there, she brought the character to life. She said, "Oh, she would have stayed in this dorm, and she
Nice.
would have done this." And
Nice.
I'm like, when I left, I was like, I was on cloud nine
Yeah.
actually, because she
Yeah.
actually talked about my character as if she was a real person.
Yes.
Actually brought her to life, and it made it a little bit easier for me to write that particular chapter. And then I began to say, well, I don't want my chapters too long. Then I do more research, because actually that was my first time. That's it's my first one, and I guess someday it'll be complete. It'll be completed.
Well,
I take it off the computer.
yeah, you'll finish it. When you're talking about, bringing your book to life, when I released Secret Places Revealed, I had a mutual friend on Facebook, and she posted the cover, and this gentleman named AC Brown um, had put it on his page, and he was starting to get some traction on the cover, and people began to make comments. And so she inboxed me. She said, "Paula, do you know AC Brown?" And I'm like, "No." She said, "Check his page out." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go to his page, and he has my book cover on his page. Well, this is AC Brown, and he's here on Facebook.
Wow.
And I met him. It was amazing.
Did you know that was him from the beginning?
No, I
Oh,
did not kn I didn't know him. I didn't know him at all, and he didn't know me at all.
really?
And so my graphic designer, um, had bought stock photo, and this was one of his stock photos, and so she put the pictures together to create my cover.
Wow.
So I went to his page and I started to see all his friends talk about the book and the cover and and they were glad to see him out and whatnot. And so I introduced myself
Yeah.
and I said, "Hi, I'm Paulette. I'm the author of Secret Places Revealed." And he said, "Hi, I'm AC Brown. I'm the model on the cover." It was amazing.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. And so he allowed me to interview him because now I have that real character that you were talking about. Because my character's name in the book, his name is Aaron, and he's a real estate developer. And so I was able to interview AC, and so a lot of his characteristics of Aaron in the book really is AC,
Ooh,
yeah. And so
amazing.
it was he made his character come to life right before my eyes, and I had contact with him. We were conversing with each other on the phone, and I was able to interview him and ask him, "Okay, tell me about some of your the things that you do, because I want to incorporate who you are into this character, because now you are alive to me. You're not just a fictional character. You
Yes.
are you are a real character in my book, and I want it to be life." And it is, and so it has just been an amazing, that finding him, God connecting us like that. It was a real story. Yeah.
That's amazing when your character actually come off the paper and your character is totally alive, and when people read it they actually talk about the character as if it was a real person.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
I felt that day when I left Spell. Like, she has actually brought my character to life. So I
Yeah.
was able to finish that part of it, her thinking, because now she's. But one girl, I said it to someone else, and she said she really she don't like the flip flopping, but I love the flip flopping if you can. If
Follow
you,
along with it.
yeah, if you can follow along with it when they go to this part in their mind and then they jump back over to where they are now, I love that part. And
Yeah.
to be honest with you, I don't even know how this writing started with me.
Hmm.
That particular book, it just came, and I just sat down and wrote out my characters. And then I put it away, and then I wrote some more, and I did a reading at a book club so that they could hear
Yeah.
one, and they was like, "I really like that."
Yeah.
And I said, "Wow, I'm not so good at this, but I think I'm getting good at this.
Yes.
Getting good at this." I love writing. I love writing, and I love talking to other people who write.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get a good feel of what I may or may not be doing. So, what is your work schedule like when you're writing?
I really have to, when I'm in the mode and in the zone to write, I really have to forget about everything else that could be potentially pulling at me at those moments. And so it has to really be a priority. And I have to really be determined that, you know what, I need to get this done. I have to set a goal for myself. I have to set a deadline for myself. There may be a certain number of words that I want to write, a day. And so my writing deadline, or my work, deadline, basically, or my workflow, really is having, the mindset to get something done that day, and then everything else that I need to do in the day, will just be put on pause. I'm a morning person, so it's easier for me to write in the mornings. Versus, in the evenings when I'm tired, and exhausted from the course of the day. And so I take whatever time I give myself, to just devote to, if it's a chapter that I need to write or some research that I need to do, then that's how I move in the flow of writing.
That's great. That's great. And your research, how long does that last?
Well, it just, what, when I wrote Secret Places Revealed, my novel, it's centered in two locations. She is in New York and he is here in California. And so I actually went to New York. And when I went to New York, I wasn't even thinking about writing a book at that time. I went to New York for the pleasure of it, just to enjoy New York, because I heard New York was just, popping, and it was a beautiful place. And it was, so many things to do in New York. And I wanted to experience that. So I went to New York. And so when I started writing this novel, I'm like, okay, I want her to come out of New York. I want her to have a reason to come to California. And so I had to start researching about the scenery and the sights in New York. Even though I had been there, I had went there as a tourist, but doing the research, I had to find, a place where she was going to be at, working. And so I had to find a place where it was a high tower where she would look down. So all these things had to be part of this intro to who she is as a character and where the scene is. So I had to do the research, and so it really, it took time to find that, but you have to do it, especially because people will check you when they're reading.
Yeah.
If something isn't right, they'll say this is not accurate. So your characters can be fictional characters, but these scenes and the places, they got to be on point. That has to be
definitely.
That has to be real. So I had to do the research in that. And once I began to do the research as far as the places in New York where I wanted her to just kind of travel through, then, have those points of contact there.
And how long did it take you to put all that together when you were doing your research? How long did that take? How long did the research take?
My research probably took me maybe about, I don't know, maybe, a few days, because there was only certain places that I wanted to talk about, and so I just did the research on those particular places. It wasn't a lot of historical data that I had to find. It was just known places, that we go to when we go to New York City, so those kind of places are you find those when you Google them, you go to, the sites online and whatnot, and you just find, those points of contact, and so it just depends on how much content you want to put in your story about that particular place is going to be determined based on how much research you want to do, and so mine's really was just events and places, that everybody can recognize once they say, oh, this is this place in New York. I know where that is. And it was the same way when I started introducing Aaron in the Bay Area. And so people that are in the Bay Area, they'll know about Yoshi's, because Yoshi's is a jazz club. So people in the Bay Area know, okay, I know where Yoshi's is. I know where, the Bay is. And so their mind visually will go there to that scene, and they'll begin to be part of the scene in itself.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Wow, it is really great talking with you today.
Thank you.
I love that. So you mentioned a children's book.
Yeah.
And, what is that particular book about?
My children's book is Princess Nevaeh, Secrets, Lessons on Self-Discovery. And I have my oldest grandbaby now, who is 12, asked me when she was 4 to write a book with her name. And
Oh,
so my grandbaby knew that I was a writer. And so she said, Mimi, can you write a book with my name in it? And her name is Nevaeh,
okay.
heaven spelled backwards. And so I said,
What
yeah,
backwards?
it's heaven spelled backwards.
Oh, heaven spelled backwards.
Yeah.
Oh,
So she said, "Can you write a book with my name in it?" And I said, "Yeah, I can." And so she gave me 2 days to write this book
2 days.
for her. She gave me 2 days.
She got confident in her grandmother.
Yeah, she put me on a deadline. She said, but she gave me a couple of days, and she came back. She didn't forget.
Oh,
She came back and she said, "Mimi, are you done writing my book?" And I said, "Oh no, I'm not. Mimi not done writing your book, but Mimi is going to finish writing your book." And from that point on, I finished writing her book because I knew my grandbaby was looking for a book with her name in it. And so I wrote it. So that's where that book derived from. It's actually in that, that was my first children's book. And so the storyline behind that book is her Mimi. I'm having a conversation with her, you know,
oh,
and it's about she wants to be a princess. And so it's my job and my responsibility as her grandmother to teach her that she's already a princess.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's a book on affirmations. It's a book on being obedient. It's a book on just teaching her some principles about life, but in a way that a 4 or a 5-year-old can really comprehend.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that. I love that. So, Pastor Paulette, as we begin to come to a close, what is something that you would say to a young person who would like to be a writer or who even thought about it? Uh, what type of guidance would you give them? Any type of guidelines that you would give them? Why?
Yeah, anyone that's looking to write a story, write a nonfiction or fiction book, I would really say to really learn the industry, really learn the craft about writing, and if you're not sure about something, hire a coach to really help you. There are a lot of people who want to write a book and become, self-publishing authors, and I encourage anyone to do that. But I also know that it takes more to just becoming an author. You really should learn the craft of it, the process of becoming an author. And when you don't learn that, and you just want to be, so anxious to just become an author, and you don't know the do's and the don'ts about it, you really sell yourself short, and then also your readers. One thing about becoming an author and writing your story is the fact that the editing piece of it is going to be the most expensive piece, and you don't want to not get your book properly edited by a professional. I don't mean you giving your book to somebody and they're not a professional editor, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, this sounds really good." A professional editor who has been editing books for years and who knows the things that they need to look for. And that's one thing that I found in this industry. I'm a book coach, and so that's one thing that I tell my clients: we're never going to cut back on editing. If you want to cut back on maybe the marketing piece of it, okay, but not the editing piece of it, because it's so valuable. Because one of the things that we want readers to do is to have a great experience when they read our books. And so by having a great experience, that means that it's properly edited, because when a book is not properly edited, people will speak about that in their post. They will write about it on Amazon. They will give bad reviews. And so you want to make sure that that book is properly edited. And so, as I mentioned, if you need to, hire a coach to help you in that process.
That's really great. That's really great. Well, Pastor Paulette, we really thank you for joining us today and wishing you all the best
Thank
in
you.
all your writing. If you could share with us one more time with our audience how they can connect with you, how they can get all of your manuscript, all of your books, you can do that at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much. They can find me on my website, which is pauletteharper.com. They can find all of my books on Amazon under Paulette Harper. And in addition to my nonfiction and my fiction book, I have a adult coloring book as well. And so they can also check that one out also.
Oh, okay. And I was looking at the person who bought your book. He said he bought That Was Then, This Is Now.
That's my first book. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And again, thank you so much for joining us on today, Pastor Paulette. And we wish you all the best and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. God bless you. And thank you all for joining in today.
Thank you. Talk with you later. And so thank you so much for tuning in to OPM Live. And we are talking with Pastor Paulette about her book. And as always, at the end, we read a scripture. But this time, I am coming from Our Daily Bread. So I'll be reading just a little bit from that and then with the scripture. And so it is called Chin Up. It says, Emmanuel was a homeless man who spent a whole year looking down at the pavement as he plodded across the city day after day. He was ashamed to meet the eyes of others in case they recognized him, for his life has not always been lived out on the street. Even more than that, he was intent on finding a coin that had been dropped or a half-smoked cigarette. His downward focus became such a habit that his bones of his spine began to become fixed in that position so that he had great difficulties in straightening up at all. The prophet Elijah's servant was looking in the wrong direction and was terrified at the huge army the king of Aram had sent to capture his master. This is coming from 2 Kings 6 and 15. But Elijah knew he was seeing only the danger and the size of the opposition. Read that particular one again. But Elijah knew he, being his servant, was seeing only the danger and the size of the opposition. He needed to have his eyes open to see the divine protection that surrounded them, which was far greater than anything Abram could bring against Elijah. When life is difficult and we feel we are under pressure, it is easy to see nothing but our problems. I'll read that one more time. When life is difficult and we feel we are under pressure, it's so easy to see nothing but our problems. But the author of the letter to the Hebrews suggests a better way. He reminds us that Jesus went through unimaginable suffering in our place, and that if we fix our eyes on him, he will strengthen us. And that pretty much was coming from 2 Kings, the 6th chapter, the 8th through the 17th verse. That is coming from that. So it says, open his eyes so that he may see. 2 Kings 6 and 17. And again, thank you so much for tuning in to OPM Live, which is an extension of Ordinary People magazine. And as we always say, love, peace, and increase. And the ordinary is the extraordinary. Be blessed and have an awesome weekend. And we will talk with you next time. Bye-bye.